An official good evening to everyone. Welcome back. Tonight is different from the sessions before it, and I want to tell you how it's different right from the start. Up until now, we could keep a little distance. We talked about who Jews are, how Jews live, how Judaism thinks, Jewish history. Heavy material, but you could sit back and listen as an observer. Tonight, you can't quite. Tonight, we talk about the questions that touch your own life. I'm going to put everyone on mute for now, but please take yourself off mute when you'd like to participate, which I hope is frequently. So tonight, we're talking about questions that are relevant for most, that are relevant for all of us. Dealing with desire, dealing with the body, dealing with the beginning of life, dealing with identity, sexuality. And here's the point I want to make before we go anywhere else. On these questions that we're going to be discussing, Judaism deliberately slows down. What I mean is, where the culture wants a fast answer, yes or no, good or bad, affirm it or condemn it, Judaism stops and asks a harder question first. That's not because Judaism doesn't care about people, it's because it cares too much to hand you a slogan. So I want to be clear about what tonight is. It's not a political session, it's not a debate. I'm not here to talk you into agreeing with the Torah. I'm here to show you how Judaism reasons when desire and suffering and moral limits all collide, and why it won't give up its own moral language, even when giving it up would be so much easier. And let me tell you whose voice you're hearing tonight. I speak from an Orthodox Jewish Torah observant Judaism. That's where I'm standing. There are other sincere Jewish movements, Reform, Conservative, and others, with people of real faith and seriousness in them. I have genuine respect for them. I'm not speaking for all of them tonight. I'm giving you the view from inside my tradition, because that's the tradition that still argues these questions out in detail, line by line, and refuses to round them off. We're going to do some general stump the rabbi in a moment. But first, I want to bring up a question and a comment that arose a couple of sessions ago that I gave an answer to at the time, but I had not thought it through entirely. You know, our sages tell us, by the way, our sages tell us that there's a statement from one of the rabbis that says, I learned a great deal from my teachers, I learned a great deal from my colleagues, but I learned even more from my students. And I feel the same way, because the question that came up caused me to be thinking for the last couple of weeks about the question. It was a fair question. A woman a few weeks ago, I'm happy to mention her name, but it's not necessary. She wanted to know why I call myself observant. I don't know if you remember that conversation. She said she's observant too. She just keeps less than I do. And I've been thinking about that question ever since, and I owe her a real answer. So what I'm about to say, while on one hand is mainly for the Jews in this chat room, I think it's also relevant for the Christians, and that's why I'm addressing it. Because the instinct underneath it is one I think the Christians will recognize about their own faith. There's a quiet assumption. It goes something like this. The commandments, which we call mitzvot, plural for mitzvah, the commandments, all the thou shalls and thou shalt nots, is an Orthodox thing. That's the assumption that people make. It's only for the Orthodox Jews. Not only, but it's mostly an Orthodox thing. The lighting of Shabbat candles, the keeping of kosher, these belong to a certain kind of Jew. And if that's not you, then they're not really yours. And I want to tell you why I think that logic is backwards. People sometimes ask me what makes me observant. And I used to reach for easy words. But here's what I actually mean. The difference between me and any other Jew, I won't say any other Jew, most Jews on this chat, is not how much I keep, not how many commandments I adhere to. Rather, it's why I understand myself to be keeping those commandments. For me, a commandment, a mitzvah, isn't binding because it speaks to me. It's because I receive it as a commandment. It's commanded to me. And then I spend my life growing into it, looking for the part of me that it speaks to. And that's the real difference, in my opinion. It's not the size or the quantity of the commandments, it's the source of it. But here's what I really want you to hear. A mitzvah, keeping a commandment, is not an Orthodox practice. Rather, it's a Jewish inheritance. When you light one candle and make the blessing, when you do one act of kindness because God asked, not only because it feels right, you're not becoming Orthodox. Rather, you're claiming what was always yours. So I'm not inviting the Jews with us tonight into a movement. I'm inviting you into your own birthright. And every mitzvah, every commandment is whole. One Shabbat candle, one blessing uttered before eating, one act of kindness done because God asked. None of these are a down payment on some fuller life that only counts once you've arrived. And I think that's where the misunderstanding is. The word mitzvah, commandment, the word mitzvah, etymologically, shares a root with another Hebrew word called tzavta, which means connection. And a connection is real the moment that it's made. So why do we learn about the commandments at all? Here's what I've come to believe. Mitzvot, commandments, are God's love language. They're how he reaches towards us and how we reach back in an embrace. When you do even one, you're not answering, you're not earning your place. You're answering a love letter. You're holding his hand. Picture a ladder. Here's the truth about ladders. Nobody stands still on a ladder. You're either climbing or you're descending. There's no holding your place in midair. And what matters on a ladder is not which rung you're on, it's which way you're facing. God forbid, a wicked person at the very bottom, climbing is higher in the only way that counts, higher than a righteous person at the very top who's sliding down. God forbid, Jack the Ripper, who wants to kill again, who holds himself back in a certain perverse way, is on a higher level spiritually than someone at a very high level who takes things for granted and is not paying very much attention to what's going on. Poor analogy, I'll keep going. Whatever rung you're on is real. Whatever rung you're on is whole. But you are never only your rung. That's not your definition. Rather, you are your direction. So when I hope that every Jew moves closer to Shabbat, when I hope that every Jew moves closer to a Torah life, please hear what I'm saying. I'm not ranking anyone. I'm not pulling anyone up on a ladder where the bottom rungs are shameful. I'm saying there's something precious waiting inside every mitzvah, every commandment. And I want everyone to taste as much of it as they can. Not because you're Orthodox, but because you're Jewish. Where you are right now is real. It's whole. And for all of us, there's always more. So that's what I have to say based on the question I received a couple of weeks ago. And I want to thank you for bringing that question up, because I've had to sit with this question, tossing and turning with it. And I'm grateful to you. Thank you. All right, it's time for Stump the Rabbi. Anybody have questions, comments, criticisms, critique? Robin, please take yourself off mute and shout it out. Robin, take yourself off mute. Robin, you're on mute.
I think I was able to finally unmute it.
Yes, you did. Okay.
Within Judaism, is there the concept, I know there's reincarnation, but is there the concept of you choose your own parents? I've heard that phrase, and it baffles me for myself, and I'm not being cynical.
Well, the direct answer to the question is no, there is no such thing.
Thank you.
However, we could say that everything is by divine providence. The family you're born into is because that's precisely the family that you needed to be born into for the soul to do its rectification in this gilgul, in this incarnation.
So it's to learn lessons?
I beg your pardon?
We're learning lessons each reincarnation?
Well, that's the hope.
Well, okay, gotcha.
That's the hope.
And if we don't, do we need to come back and repeat it to learn that lesson that we didn't learn?
So I'll give you a synopsis of reincarnation in Judaism.
Okay.
It's not the reincarnation that people are used to hearing about in the Eastern traditions.
Okay.
There are 600,000 root souls of Jews. I'm speaking specifically about Jews because, from a belief perspective, Christians do not believe in reincarnation. Christianity believes in eternal heaven and eternal hell.
Okay.
So I'm not being exclusionary when I'm speaking about the Jewish soul. I'm saying rather how Jews look at this subject. There are 600,000 Jewish root souls. Those 600,000 root Jewish souls came from Sinai 3,737 years ago. Every time a body perishes and a soul rises, there are mitzvahs, there are commandments that it fulfilled and ones that it didn't fulfill. Those that it did not fulfill will ultimately come down with another root soul into a new body. So it's not the same soul coming back, but there is a certain familiarity, and it matches up with a root soul from the same branch that one was with. I know this is sounding really way out there.
No, it makes sense.
The answer to your question specifically is the soul returns in order to finish unfinished business.
A different soul.
Yes, and this goes on multiple times. Multiple times.
Rabbi?
Hi, Doreen.
Yes.
How are you, Devara Tova?
That's a good question.
All right, we'll discuss it.
I'm working on it. But when our granddaughter Liam was born, we dealt with my daughter and told us that she felt that Liam was born with many challenges, and for whatever reason, that soul needed to be in that body. But the blessing was that we got her because she was such a joy to us. We learned so much from her that she lives inside of me. And I saw her coming for her grandfather last week. And I know he's got work to do, but Liam was there waiting. And it feels good. I also wanted to say, I listened to you from last week, and it's so beautiful where most of these people live. My son David once had a place up on, I think it was Lake Lure, and it's beautiful and peaceful, truly God's country. But if I were there, I wouldn't have my community. My husband died last week, and I live in a community. And that community so embraced me and my children with everything, with just being, with not saying anything, but of course, 10 tons of food. And then I moved over into Rabbi Yonatan's community on Monday, going to that class. That's another neighborhood. And everyone came to me and remembered something good about my husband. And if I lived up in my son's cabin, that was so beautiful and wonderful, I wouldn't have had that. So I'm very grateful that Jews need communities and that I have one. And Rabbi Yonatan, you know how much I thank you.
The feeling is mutual, Devar Tova. We say a Jewish blessing when somebody is in mourning. We say, may you be comforted amongst the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. May you only know from happy occasions from here on out, and may Baruch, your husband, your departed, be a licht in Gan Eden, be a light in heaven, and he should be a good better. He should be a good advocate for you and for the rest of us here. And may we all be reunited, not up there, but may we all be reunited down here with the coming of the Messiah. Thank you for sharing that, Walter. Who else would like to share? Walter, good evening to you, my friend.
Good evening. The fact that my sympathies and condolences to Doreen.
Amen.
I'm very sad for that. The fact that truly we pray for God's comfort to her. In comment to your introductory comments, I find them extraordinarily relatable. The fact that I appreciate that. That was a great moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My Sheila.
I'm not sure if it actually relates, but it's a question that I actually wrote down here because I know how I feel. But my question is, are we a race, or are we a religion, or are we both?
Yes and no. We are defined many different ways. Some people call us a religion, although 90% of us are not religious, whatever that means. They call us a race, and yet we come in every color. We have Jews that originate in Ethiopia, in Kaifeng, China, in Cochin, India. 65% of Israel is dark-skinned, however you define dark skin. 35% are Ashkenazi, Europeans, gefilte fish eaters. So you can't necessarily define us by race. You can't define us by religion. Are we a culture? That doesn't fit either. So the answer to are we civilization doesn't quite fit. Nothing quite fits. The only thing for sure that fits is to say that we are a family that became a nation by virtue of the fact that we accepted a covenant at Mount Sinai, and that's what continues to bind us together today. Nothing else. So sorry, there's no easy definition.
Thank you.
Could I make a comment?
Yes, please. Who's
Yes.
speaking? I don't see.
It's Janie. It's
Hi,
Janie.
Janie.
Hi. Yeah, I learned something new tonight. I didn't know that Jewish people believed in reincarnation, but
Yeah.
I can totally see that if I was God, I'd have a Muslim man come back as a Muslim woman, definitely. But I've got a little different view about, God. I feel like God has to appoint some people to be born in frail bodies or to poor families so that others of us have an opportunity to serve and to grow. I mean, how could we grow if everybody was rich and healthy? I don't think it's um, any good on me if I do a good deed for someone. It makes me feel better. It probably makes them feel worse. Um, I just wonder how you feel about something like that.
Summarize and paraphrase the question.
Do you think it's possible that God appoints people to be born frail or poor so that others have an opportunity to serve them and learn and grow?
So first of all, it has nothing to do with what I think. It has to do with what the Torah says, and the Torah says very clearly that we are all custodians for one another. He created a partnership with us, and he expects us to hold up our end. It's a mitzvah, it's a commandment to give when you have. It's also a commandment to take when you need. What is definitely not a mitzvah, what is definitely not a commandment, is to do neither one. One cannot sit around complacently and not engage. Either you're giving or you're taking. Both of them are beautiful acts.
Okay.
Who else?
I have a question.
Okay, who's speaking now?
This is Cheryl.
Hi, Cheryl.
Can you not see me?
Maybe I can.
Okay, that's okay. Well, I'd like to know who that man is behind you.
The man behind me, that's a portrait of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was the seventh rabbi of the Chabad dynasty that began about 250 years ago. He's the seventh and the last of the line. He was our Rebbe. I'll explain what a Rebbe is in a moment. For 43 years until he passed away in 1994. The reason that his portrait is there is because I received my marching orders from him.
Okay.
My entire raison d'etre is wrapped up in what it is that he felt that I should be doing. And I don't mean to imply that I had a private audience with him because I never did.
Okay.
But it was more of it was a clear message delivered to me, though I never met him. And that's why I do what I do. And that's what I'm dedicated to in life.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your dedication and your answer.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Richard, take yourself off mute, Richard.
There we go. Okay. If you haven't, to anyone on this phone call, if you haven't read the Rebbe, please do. I put a quote from the Rebbe since we were talking about reincarnation in the chat, and it's taken from a text that's titled Wisdom to Heal the Earth, Meditations and Teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Richard. You're not getting royalties from this, are you?
Unfortunately, no.
Sarah, please.
Where in Judaism and originally did it say anything about reincarnation? It's not in the Torah.
Actually, it is in the Torah. It's throughout the Torah. But what most people don't know about the Torah is that the Torah is the same words are written on different levels simultaneously. So there are four main ways to interpret the Torah.
Mhm.
One is called pshat.
Mhm.
Pshat is the simple meaning of the verse. Let's take a verse, for example, probably the most famous verse in the Torah. Yehi or vayehi or. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. If we read the scripture, we all know what that means. It means that on the first day of creation, God created light. No argument there, right? That's what it says. There's
Mhm.
also a question buried within that statement. Does anybody see the question? It's right there in front of us, but it's hard to see the question. The question is, what happened to that light? Because if we continue to read, we see that God created the sun on the fourth day. So he creates this light on the first day, and then it's vanished. And it doesn't ostensibly appear again until the fourth day. Pretty wild, huh?
Mhm.
Anybody ever see that before? Probably not. Let's go to, except for Richard. Let's take it down one level. We have a level called remez. In the level called remez, we take the same scenario, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And we find out that this light is something called Or Ganuz. Or Haganuz. Or Haganuz literally means the hidden light. So God took this light, and now we know that he hid it. We don't know why, and we don't know where, but we know he hid the light. Okay, so now we have a little bit better understanding. Let's take it down one more level to a place called Drash. Drash is yet another way to see the Torah. And in Drash, we see that this hidden light, this Or Haganuz, was hidden as netzatzot, as sparks, and placed throughout creation. So now we know that this light is actually embedded within creation itself. We're not quite sure where, and we're not sure why that's meaningful or what we're supposed to do with it. And then we go one more level to a level called Sod. And in Sod, we find out that we are supposed to extract these sparks. Our job, your job, my job, the Jew's job, the Gentile job, all of our jobs is to find those sparks and release them. And how do we do that? We do that through acts of goodness and kindness. We do that by paying attention to the people around us, by being courteous, by being sensitive, by being generous, by giving. When we're acting like mention, when we're acting like good people, the sparks get released. Take it down one more level, and we see that this light itself, called the hidden light, has the same gematria, the same numerology of 207. I may be getting a little too intricate. It has the same what word am I looking for? The same structure as the word Ein Sof. Ein Sof is the original light that God used to create the universe. So there's hidden light down here, and the light that goes behind creation, before creation, God's essence himself. So when we go back to Yehi or Vayehi or, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, That light that he brought into the world was not a new creation. He was giving of his own essence to the universe. So, whereas before you read, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and then, all right, what's next? You see now the intricacy in Judaism that allows us to go deep and understand things that are not available at the superficial level. So when you speak about reincarnation, it's all over the Torah. It's everywhere. But you have to be able to understand these different levels of learning of the Torah in order to do that. Most of us are reading the scripture itself, and we're not being miners digging down to see it any deeper. Any other questions? Sarah?
600,000 souls is not a lot. So,
600,000 root souls. From those root souls are branches, and then there's branches on branches and branches on branches and branches.
oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, let's get started, and feel free. This is a session where you're going to want to participate. So there's going to be a lot of exchange, I would presume. Just one point of emphasis before we start. Many people carry private stories into a conversation like this. Some of them are tender, some of them are raw, some of them are unresolved. There's no expectation that anyone should share anything personal here. If a question is a little too close to home for you, you're welcome to bring it to me privately afterwards. We're going to treat these questions with moral seriousness, and I want you to hear why. When a tradition treats human desire and human suffering as too complicated to talk about, that is not compassion. It usually just leaves people alone with their confusion. Judaism does the opposite. It names the problem. It refuses to flatter it. It refuses to panic. And then it asks, what are we responsible for? And that's what we're going to do tonight. Before any single issue, Judaism insists on a deeper question, because every modern controversy rests on this question. Who decides what is right and what is wrong? Modern secular culture answers almost on reflex. The individual. Authenticity becomes authority. Desire becomes evidence. Autonomy becomes the highest good. It runs so deep, it's rarely said out loud. If something feels deeply true to me, it must be morally legitimate. How often do we hear people say, speak your truth? If a limit causes pain in our modern secular culture, the limit itself must be unjust. If a boundary conflicts with identity, the boundary must yield to the identity. Judaism does not begin there. Judaism begins with an assumption that our culture resists. Moral truth is not invented by human beings, it is entrusted to them. And here I want to speak directly to the Christians and say, on this question, who decides right and wrong? Christians and Jews are completely aligned. We are allies. Christians already believe morality is received, not invented. Christians already believe a person stands under a truth larger than themselves. So before we reach the places where our traditions differ, I want you to feel we're standing on the same ground. None of what we're talking about makes feelings irrelevant. Judaism takes suffering seriously, profoundly so. But neither emotion nor autonomy is sovereign. Pain does not automatically grant permission. Sincerity does not automatically create moral authority. So Judaism does not ask the question, what feels right to me? It asks, what am I responsible for, even when it costs me? And that's why Judaism speaks so often about covenant. A covenant means you didn't design the terms. You inherit obligations before you assert rights. You're not free to redefine reality just because reality feels heavy or reality feels unfair. Modern culture treats limits as cruelty. Judaism treats limits as the beginning of moral life. Limits in Judaism are not cruelty. Limits are how power is restrained. Without limits, desire becomes authority. Compassion becomes chaos. Certainty becomes tyranny. And history is full of these three. Judaism resists this abolition of limits, not because it's harsh, but because it's realistic about human nature. How are we doing? Okay. How are we doing so far?
Right.
Okay.
Can I just ask you to expound on what you just said? I think it was freedom becomes tyranny. And okay, what were the three things?
I said that compassion becomes chaos, certainty becomes tyranny. History is full of all three of these things. I also said desire becomes authority. Here's what our era demands of us. By our era, I mean the cultural secular milieu that we live in. It asks a moral tradition for one of two answers to every hard question. Either affirm it without boundaries or condemn it without dignity. There's no other choice put forth. Judaism refuses both. Judaism insists on dignity with boundaries. And that refusal is exactly what people hear as judgmental. Because our age confuses disagreement with hatred. It confuses boundaries with harm. Judaism does not have that confusion. You're familiar with the prophet Malachi? He's the last of the prophets. Speaking in the early Second Temple period, he was around the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. In English, Ezra is Ezra. Yeah, okay. Ezra and Nehemiah. He was speaking to people that were tired, disillusioned, and cynical. That was us. We had good reason for it. The people wanted a religion without any restraint. They wanted to have the fun rituals without any obligation. They wanted to belong and have no responsibility. Malachi is fierce about one temptation in particular, and that is reshaping holiness around convenience. Basically, he confronts people who say, in effect, we still believe we're just tired of the rules. That's what the people of his generation were saying. Yeah, we believe, but we don't want all the rules to go with it. And his answer in spirit is this: when the covenant becomes negotiable, a society begins to rot from the inside. Judaism still carries that pressure today. Bottom line, from our perspective, the world does not get to redefine the covenant simply because the covenant has become difficult. So here is where it gets a little tense, usually, because this is where the abstraction ends. Judaism refuses false clarity where human lives are at stake. For example, it does not say that all abortion is murder. And it does not say abortion is merely a private choice. Both of those statements can potentially offer emotional relief. Both of those statements avoid the harder work of moral distinction. And Judaism distinguishes between moral seriousness and the opposite. An embryo in Judaism, based on Jewish law, an embryo is not a born human being. A fetus is not morally meaningless. And the mother is a full moral subject. These are not evasions. They're commitments that refuse to flatten reality. Life unfolds. Moral weight accumulates. Responsibility intensifies. Modern culture demands a one-sentence answer. When does life begin? Judaism hears a different question underneath it. What question do we hear? At what point and to what degree am I responsible? That's the question. And this isn't just how we feel about it. This is the law. This is Jewish law. Jewish law tells us that when a woman's life is in danger in childbirth, one removes the fetus because her life takes precedence over its life. But once the greater part of that fetus has emerged, it may not be touched. For we do not set aside one life for another. This law is called pikuach nefesh. It tells us that when one's life is in danger, one may take action to preserve the life. One must, not one may, one must. Look at what this law is establishing. Before the fetus emerges, the mother's life takes precedence. So the fetus is not treated as a full equal person. After emergence, the two lives are equal. You may not set aside for the other. So the status is not nothing. And it's not identical to a born child. It's graded. And that one distinction is what lets Judaism speak responsibly about tragic cases, without dismissing the unborn or erasing the mother. And notice this law is specifically about mortal danger. It's the floor of the conversation, not the whole of it. So what do we do with the hardest cases? What do we do with rape? What do we do with incest? What do we do with severe fetal abnormality? The threat to the mother. What do we do with a family that's collapsing under the pressure? Not theoretically, in reality. What do we do? What do we do with trauma? Not theoretical trauma, but trauma that's here and present, real danger. Judaism doesn't respond with slogans. It responds with grief, with law, and with moral seriousness. Judaism doesn't sanctify suffering, and it also refuses to erase the gravity of ending potential life just because the circumstances are horrific. And this is where the culture around us gets impatient. It wants the tradition to say one of two things. Either it's always murder, so the moral world stays simple, or it's always choice, so the moral world stays convenient. Judaism says something much harder than that. Judaism says tragedy exists. Responsibility does not disappear because tragedy exists. Let me slow it down, because people sometimes think they heard Judaism say something cold when Judaism is trying to protect something human. Judaism is not asking a woman in crisis to become a symbol. It's not denying trauma. It's saying, don't let trauma become the final moral authority. Trauma deserves care. Trauma deserves compassion. But trauma by itself does not decide what's permissible. That's not cruelty. That's what it means for a tradition to treat a person as a full moral adult. So when does an embryo become a human life? Biologically, it's living from the beginning. But Judaism distinguishes biological life from full legal personhood. That distinction is exactly what lets it speak responsibly, without dismissing the unborn or erasing the mother. When does the soul enter the body? Here, Judaism is careful. There are different strands in our sources. Some point to a later developmental threshold. Others emphasize birth as the great transition. What matters tonight is not to argue metaphysics, as though we could see the soul under a microscope. What matters is what Judaism consistently demands, which is reverence, restraint, and responsibility. Judaism does not weaponize uncertainty to permit everything, and does not weaponize certainty to forbid compassion. It distinguishes case by case. A brief parenthesis: in Orthodox communities, you're not going to find the rabbis practicing the legality of Judaism, where these cases are referred. You're not going to see the rabbis being more stringent than the couples themselves, because abortion is never used as birth control with our people. God forbid. Amongst the people themselves, amongst the husbands and wives themselves, they want the children. Sometimes it's not possible. The rabbis have the unpleasant responsibility of distinguishing case by case, with fear of heaven and fear of harming people. In a society that calls a pregnancy a clump of cells, or a full person, depending upon which slogan helps you today, Judaism's refusal to play that game is not weakness, it's integrity. Let's hold off here. Let me hear from you. Anyone? This is a first with this group.
It's Sheila.
Hello, Sheila.
The way I've always felt about abortion is, and this is my personal feeling, I would never do it. I mean, unless it was an unviable fetus. But my attitude has always been, that's my decision, and other people may have a different decision. And I've always been satisfied with that feeling, that I know what I would do, but I wouldn't condemn other people for whatever they decide to do. I don't know if that's right or wrong. It's just the way I personally feel.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So there's a wide range of divergence on that opinion. That's what keeps it interesting. Yes.
I have some experience with abortion personally, and it was very damaging to me. I had 2 abortions as a teenager, and it's something that is taken from your soul, whether it's your choice or that you can never replace. But knowing that those 2 children are with the Lord and my expectation of meeting them someday gives me hope. But I think it's too easily accessible today. And I think our culture just accepts it like they just accept getting a vaccine anymore. It's become not immoral anymore. It's like if that's what you want to do and that's what's best for you, then do it. And honestly, that's the way it was then too. And this was back in like the mid 70s, and I was told it was a clump of cells. So, and afterwards, I actually went through some healing classes, and was an advocate at a crisis pregnancy center there in Woodstock, Georgia. And it's sad that these young women have no hope.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sure this wasn't easy for you.
Thank you.
Class appreciates you. Thank you.
It
Anyone else?
just seems to me like that humanity is so devalued
Yeah.
these days. Yeah, it's like, it's just a piece of skin, throw it away. Sad.
Yeah.
Because we've forgotten that we were created by God, and he's the one that, decided to give life. Yeah.
It's not our place to
Every-
take it away. I don't. That's my own personal feeling. I mean, my
Yeah.
feelings have changed radically since then.
Everyone has value and a purpose, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
So, hypothetically, a late stage abortion occurs. There's a soul in the fetus. Does that soul reincarnate somewhere else?
So my understanding in Judaism is that the soul enters the body in stages. How much of the soul is in the body in a later stage of pregnancy, I don't know. Nor can I answer the question because I don't have an answer to the question. I simply don't know the answer. And obviously, anyone who does know the answer is based on more or less conjecture.
Sounds like he just stumped the rabbi.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Slam dunk. I don't know the answer to the question.
Rabbi?
Susan?
I'm a baby boomer, which a lot of us are, post-Holocaust. And a lot of the things that were around is that those children that were slaughtered in the Holocaust, that they came back, the children post-Holocaust. Does that make any sense, or is that just?
Souls are reincarnated. We know that. The people who die, al pi kiddush Hashem, people who die sanctifying God's name, get an express elevator to the seventh heaven. So they're already on a very high level after having to endure something like that. I'll leave it there. Who else? Okay. Next fun subject. Here are the questions that carry the greatest charge. homosexuality, transgender identity, sexual autonomy. The meaning of the body, the meaning of restraint, the meaning of dignity. Modern culture treats desire as self-validating. To want is to justify.
Mm-hmm.
To feel is to authorize. Identity becomes not just descriptive, but prescriptive. Judaism does not share that assumption. Desire is real, desire is human, and desire is very powerful. But it's not sovereign. So Judaism here distinguishes between feeling, action, and obligation. That distinction labels us, gets called harmful or cruel today, whereas Judaism sees it as essential to moral life. Without it, there's no meaningful way to speak about self-restraint, responsibility, or holiness. Modern culture increasingly says, if I feel it, I must express it. Judaism says, if I feel it, I must govern it. Not because Judaism fears desire, but because Judaism knows what happens when desire becomes law. So let's get down to brass tacks, as they say. A gay man is a full member of the Jewish community. He is counted, he is taught, he is respected, he is not treated as an outsider or a threat. So whereas certain sexual acts remain prohibited, that's between the individual and God. It's not up to a Jewish court. But nonetheless, those sexual acts, everybody knows in the Torah, are prohibited, but they're not prohibited out of hatred. They're prohibited because Judaism places limits on how sexuality is expressed. Those limits are not statements about worth. They're statements about obligation.
I have a couple of friends that are gay, and we're still friends. But the way I tried to explain it to them is God has balance in everything. There's day, there's night, there's winter, summer, male, female. When a child is raised with two fathers or two mothers, it's just, it can't come out right. That's off balance. And that's the problem, one of the problems with it. I don't know whether that's right or not, but.
Well, I'm going to push back on that for a moment and say, take the opposite position. I've been around a lot of gay people. And I can tell you, for most gay people this is anecdotal, for most gay people that I've been in relationships with, their sexual identity as gay is a very real thing, fully integrated with it. They don't feel they have a choice.
Oh, I agree.
So for an individual, for a rabbi, for anyone to say, suck it up, just don't give in to that desire, not my place to say. We are all given tests in life. In Judaism, marriage is clearly between a man and a woman. There's no question about that. If somebody lives a different lifestyle, as many people do, there are many homosexual relationships, men with men, women with women, etc. It's a fact of the world that we live in. Judaism is not here to pass judgment on that. Again, that's between them and God. I want to share with you a story a beautiful encounter that really shows better than anything else I could say. A young man in the early 1980s, if I remember, came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was gay. He was carrying a quiet despair. He believed his life had put him outside the reach of holiness. He all but said there's no place for someone like him. Can you imagine a religious young man, religious like from the tradition that I'm in, like religious, and he's gay? Can you imagine what that burden is to carry? He all but said there's no place for someone like him. The Rebbe listened to him, and then he did two things at once. He didn't erase the Torah's boundaries, and he didn't erase the young man either. He said gently, do not measure yourself only by what you cannot do right now. Take hold of whatever good you can do. The next mitzvah, the next commandment, the next act of kindness, the next step. And never say you're not doing it. Say you're not doing it yet. You never know what tomorrow may bring. Notice what the Rebbe didn't do. He didn't pretend that the boundary was gone. And he didn't treat the young man as a problem to be solved either. He pointed him towards the next piece of good he could actually reach. Did you put on tefillin today? Do you have a mezuzah on your door? Are you eating kosher? Those are the questions. Just because you're not doing one thing doesn't mean you're not doing the other. We just had a conversation about reincarnation. Souls coming down because they have unfinished mitzvahs, unfinished commandments, so they have to come back. So maybe that's one he'll have to come back for. But in the here and now, he's got things to do as a gay man. That is dignity with boundaries, not a slogan, rather a person in the room being seen. Which brings us to transgenderism. Transgender people are treated with dignity and care. I have friends, a few friends, who are Chabad rabbis in Los Angeles, in areas of West Hollywood and Silver Lake, if you're familiar with that part of the world, with a high incidence of LGBTQ, I don't know all the letters, I'm sorry, and transgenders, et cetera, et cetera. And they're dealing with these issues all the time. A friend of mine also is a Chabad rabbi at Georgia Tech. And one of his students came to him and said that he's in the middle of transition. This is new territory for rabbis to have to deal with this stuff. We don't always know what's to do, but we do know mockery, humiliation, cruelty. These are moral failures on our part. Torah does not permit humiliation. And Jewish law still asks embodied questions. What is male? What is female? And what obligations follow the body? So let me answer the question people are actually wondering. On which side, in Orthodox Judaism, we have a separation between men and women. We have separate sections. That curtain between men and women is called a mechitza, a barrier, a curtain. So the question is, on which side of this mechitza does a transgender person pray? Traditional Jewish law answers by the body a person was born with. A transgender woman born male is seated on the men's side. A transgender man born female is seated on the woman's side. Not to wound anyone, not as a verdict of their worth, but because we follow the halachic, the Jewish legal sex. And Jewish law reads that from the body, not from one's gender identity. The curtain that separates is not a social statement, it's a structure for prayer. Part of how traditional Judaism guards the focus of public worship. And this is exactly where Torah does not permit humiliation.
I feel bad for the people that are, struggling. They feel like they're in the wrong body. I certainly don't condemn them. I know it's a battle, but it's almost like a form of prejudice. I mean, if you're a woman, but you feel like you only love women, what if there was a man that made you feel wonderful and appreciated you and was kind and you're saying, no, I'm just interested in women. To me, I don't know. Is it a little bit of prejudice?
You could say,
If,
using your logic, you could say the opposite. You could say, I like women. Why am I being prejudiced against other men?
yeah, well, prejudiced against anybody, really.
So are you
Who?
advocating free love for everyone?
No, 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 no.
I didn't think so.
Not free love. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. To if you're a woman who feels like should be in the body of a man, but I feel like you could love the proper person, that you shouldn't shut it out because you feel like you should have been a man or feel like you should have been a woman. It's who, like I said, who appreciates you, who makes you feel good, who
Duly
you like
noted.
to be around.
Duly noted.
Mm.
So, my friends, the ruling is firm. The way we carry it cannot be cruel. A rabbi who states the law coldly or turns a person into a spectacle has failed the Torah twice. Because Judaism's refusal to treat the body as irrelevant is not hatred. It's part of its larger refusal to let identity be self-created without reference to obligation. It's 8:37. If you don't mind, I got to keep going, and then we're going to save some time for questions afterwards. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So here's the area that people often call private. And because it's private, people assume that it's morally neutral. In Judaism, there is no such concept as anything that's morally neutral. I'm talking about birth control, private behavior, the hidden life. Birth control gets neither blanket permission nor blanket prohibition. That's probably not a surprise to you by this point. Judaism distinguishes between methods, circumstances, health, marriage, responsibility. It asks questions our culture rarely asks. What is being protected? What is being avoided? What obligation is being postponed and why? What is the effect on the marriage? Judaism doesn't reduce it to may I do what I want. It asks, am I using my freedom responsibly? The culture insists that if something is private and consensual, it must be morally neutral. Judaism does not accept that reduction. Not because we're preoccupied with the bedroom, but because we're preoccupied with the formation of the human being. Habits form the heart. Habits form the mind. Habits form the soul. And that's why Judaism speaks about restraint. Restraint is not repression. Restraint is governance. It's the difference between a person who owns their life and a person who is owned by their impulses. I'm going to talk about disagreement. Judaism expects disagreement, not because truth is relative, but because human beings are limited. In fact, argument is woven into the tradition itself. As I think we may have discussed, our sages preserved all the minority opinions on the page right next to the law itself within the Talmud. So argument in Judaism is not the enemy of the truth. It's how a limited people pursues the truth, larger than any one of them. You know, the rabbis that deal with these issues that we're talking about tonight, transgenderism, etc., they are licking their chops. They're so excited to have something new, to have to go back and delve into the books to figure out what's the law here. This only comes up once in a generation. I don't mean they're gleeful about it. I mean that they are engaged, these big genius rabbis, to figure this stuff out. But notice what makes that kind of argument possible. It's not that truth isn't real. There were two famous study partners. One was called Rosh Lakish. The other was called, oh, my mind is blanking now, Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was such a genius. They were both geniuses. They argued non-stop about every single thing there was in the Talmud. For the sake of God, they were arguing, sitting across from each other every day, year after year, decade after decade, arguing every point. It allowed each of them to develop their minds to such an extent that any argument that was brought to the table, Rosh Lakish would be able to come up with 100 refutations, 100 arguments. Yochanan would come up with 101. Can you imagine? Rosh Lakish passed away. Rabbi Yochanan was inconsolable. He was in such grief about losing the man he had argued with every day of his life for the last 40 years. His contemporaries didn't know what to do for him. They brought him one genius rabbi after the other. And each rabbi that would come to him, Rabbi Yochanan would make a point, and the other rabbi would say, oh, that's very interesting. You've got a very good point there. Rabbi Yochanan said, get rid of these guys. I'm going to continue to grieve for my Rabbi Rosh Lakish. I'm not saying that we can only, what am I trying to say here? I'm saying that we shouldn't try to keep the company of people who only accept our conclusions. We don't need to agree on all the answers. We need to share the deeper commitments that make answers worth seeking. Judaism is not afraid of those conversations. They're not afraid of these disagreements. Disagreements such as that human dignity is real, that truth is not just my feeling, that I'm responsible for something beyond myself. I bring this up because on that ground, Jews and Christians can disagree about a great deal of theology and still reason together honestly. And that's why I'm bringing this up. For some reason in our culture, we believe that deep moral disagreement is automatically violence. And Judaism rejects that. Disagreement is inevitable in a complex world. And my friends, we live in a complex world. And a mature society learns to disagree without collapsing. It doesn't mean cruelty. It doesn't mean dehumanization. It means moral seriousness held by people who still see each other. So, Judaism is not trying to win arguments. It's trying to prevent two kinds of moral destruction. The certainty that hardens the heart and excuses harm, and the flip side, the despair that empties life of obligation altogether. Moral certainty says, I feel strongly, therefore I'm right. Moral despair says, nothing is knowable, therefore nothing matters, let the good times roll. Judaism refuses both of these positions. It insists on something older and harder, covenantal responsibility. Doesn't promise easy answers, but it does promise a way to live morally without surrendering to chaos and without surrendering to tyranny. It's not always comfortable, but it's how covenantal civilizations survive, and it's how human beings survive, especially in an age that can name every desire, but no longer knows how to govern a single desire. Next session, arguably the most important session of the 6, we're going to step back and ask a much larger question. And that is, what kind of moral framework allows disagreement without collapse? Not only for Jews, but for all of humanity. And that's where we're going to go next week. All right, who's got questions, comments, criticisms, cucumbers? Susan.
I wanted you to say it once again. You said something about society, and when I didn't. It was very, very profound, but I didn't get. I can't remember the whole thing. So
You got what you're supposed to get, Susan.
it's after my bedtime, Rabbi.
Okay.
You said, in the way I thought it is that when you're making excuses for a society, it's when society makes excuses for itself. To paraphrase it, it's on the decline. I wanted to know how you said it because it was so eloquently said.
Actually, I think you're confusing what I said with what I wrote that was published today in your newspaper. Did you read that article?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, that's the point that I made. So you can read the article and give us a book report next week.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for these talks. I love it.
You're very welcome. I love this kind of engagement. This is my favorite thing to do.
Rabbi, I want to say something.
Yes, Sarah.
I grew up in Mea Shearim in Jerusalem.
Well, yeah, but for those of you who don't know, Mea Shearim is maybe the single most ultra-Orthodox religious place that a Jew could possibly reside.
Really. And I went to school with the kids and everything. I want to say that it's such a pleasure, so wonderful to listen to you because you're so open-minded. You're so much open to the rest of the information in the world. You're not just going one way, the Orthodox way, and you don't see what's happening around you. And I love that. And I love that. And I would always want to learn and study from you.
Sarah, thank you for saying that. But what I'm expressing to you, what I'm expressing all the time, is my understanding of Torah, which comes from a Torah observant Orthodox perspective.
I understand.
Within Orthodoxy, there are movements within Orthodoxy that as in Christianity and in other religions also, that seclude themselves and stay cloistered and stay only with their own kind. It's a form of self-protection. It may be a very good thing because it served us very well over so many thousands of years, people trying to slaughter us. So those groups really have a lot to do with keep the tradition going. I come from a different orientation, a Hasidic orientation, a Chabad orientation, which basically says that our responsibility is to take Judaism and share it outward.
Be the light.
And that's where I'm comfortable. That's what I do. Or that's what I try to do. But this isn't, there's no Jonathanisms in what I'm saying, except for the bad jokes. There are no Jonathanisms. This is all Torah as I understand it. Now, there are many people who are much more understanding and much more educated in Torah than I am. So I can't tell you that I got it all right, but I can tell you that sincerely, what I'm saying, I think, is what the Torah is saying. And believe me, with the Jewish people, you say something wrong, and 100 people are going to jump down your throat. It's just kind of, welcome to my world. So I'd be hearing a lot more criticism if I was way out there. But thank you. I really appreciate what you said, sir.
You're very welcome.
Who else? I want to share with you. First of all, please preempt me if you got something, but this just came to mind because it comes up a lot in dialogue between Christians and Jews. Not that long ago, I was speaking at, I guess I don't need to say the denomination, it doesn't matter, but I was speaking at a church. And I gave whatever Bible lesson I was supposed to give. And then we opened it up to stump the rabbi. Now, this group that I spoke to was in North Georgia. No, excuse me, they were in North Carolina, right over the border. And for the most part, these are people that live their whole lives in that environment, had never met a Jew before, certainly had never spoken to a Jew before. And as I'm giving the presentation, I'm just looking at the audience and I see facial expressions starting to change. People becoming open, people becoming receptive, people smiling. Then came Stump the Rabbi. And a woman said to me, Rabbi, I never met a Jew before. And I'm so impressed with what it is that you shared with us this evening. And at the same time, my heart is broken because I can tell you that I have a genuine affinity, genuine feelings for you. I care for you very much, she says. And I can't stand the thought that you're going to die and go to hell.
Oh, boy.
She said that with such beauty. She said that with such sincerity. She did not say that, believe it or not, in a putative way. She said that because Christianity believes that there's only one path towards salvation. Now, the degree of this differs denominationally, but in this particular denomination, pretty straightforward and clear. But I knew for a fact that she meant that with all the love she had in her heart. So I acknowledged her for that and said, I understand that you're being so sincere, that you really do mean every word that you said. So I'll take it the way you intended it. But I would like to share one thing with you. And I'm sorry if this makes anyone in the room uncomfortable, I said. But the fact is, since the advent of Christianity until only the last few generations, Jews have been persecuted by Christians throughout Europe, in Catholic countries, after the Reformation in Protestant countries. Martin Luther himself, we already discussed how he started out being a friend of the Jews and ultimately wanted us dead. We had to deal with crusades. There were 4 crusades from the year 960 to the year 1040. Each time that the Crusaders went to march to Jerusalem, because Jerusalem was under Muslim occupation. They wanted to free the holy sites from Muslim rule. They couldn't help but take a detour on the way and stop in Jewish villages and slaughter hundreds of thousands of Jews for being Jewish and for murdering their God. And the Inquisitions, there were Inquisitions all over Europe. The choice was very simple. At the most brutal Inquisitions, we were told, kiss the sword, kiss the cross, or you're going to get the sword right on the back of the neck. Not all the Inquisitions were that harsh. Some of them were, you got 3 days to leave. You have 3 days to leave the community that you've lived in for the last 1,500 years. And first, we're going to confiscate all your wealth before you do leave. We've been accused of every kind of terrible thing that you could accuse a group of people of. We're told.
One thing that I'm sorry.
We're told that we poison their wells. We're told that we spread the bubonic plague. We're told that we murder Christian children and bake our matzah with it. We've been expelled from 14 countries in Europe. And now you're telling me that I have to believe as you believe, or I'm going to hell? It's a free country. You're entitled to say it. And as I said, I understand where you're coming from. But can you be a little bit sensitive to what my people have been through? So that's what I wanted to share with you. I think that Judaism and Christianity has so much more in common than we have disagreements over. And those disagreements that we do have are strictly theological. Theological disagreement in Judaism is not a problem. We welcome it. Whether we're talking about Jesus as Messiah or Son of God, whether we're talking about good versus evil, whatever the theological difference may be, from a Jewish perspective, we should be allies, because there is a very great evil in the world, a very great neo-paganism that is taking over all parts of the world. And I just want to say that this is what we need to be focused on. You know, Jews make a lot of news everywhere we are. There's not many of us, but wherever we are, we're all over the news. There are atrocities being committed against Christians all over the world. It doesn't make the news. Why is that? Why is that? Christians in Syria, Christians in Iran, Christians in Lebanon, excuse me, not in Lebanon, Christians in Iraq, Christians in Somalia. Why does this brutality go on and nobody talks about it? I'm telling you, Jews and Christians are allies. From a Jewish perspective, it's it's obvious. It's more difficult for the Christian to accept that premise. And the reason why is because Christianity, for the most part, is an exclusive religion. The basis of Christianity is this is what we believe. Salvation can only come through Jesus. And if you don't embrace Jesus, you can't be saved. Whereas Judaism believes every path is valid. Every righteous person has an important role to play in this world and in the world to come. Completely different mindset. But with that being said, this is an appeal to all Jews and to all Christians to literally love one another. Because since the advent of dispensationalism, since the advent of evangelism, since the Second Vatican Council, since so many charters of so many Protestant denominations have been including the Jews, even the supersessionalists who believe that only the Christian way is the only valid path, even they are tolerant of Jews today. So we're living in unprecedentedly good times. But we do have a common enemy, as I mentioned, and that's what I think we need to be focused on. When I say enemy, I don't mean that we need to go to war. I mean the opposite. I mean that we have to share a beautiful message with everybody and embrace them. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Who has more questions?
In my class that I took some time ago, talking about the persecution of the Jews, they said, I think it was in Spain, that even if a Jew said they were converting and they believed in Jesus, Yeshua, they would torture them to see if they would change. And if they tortured them till they died, they were considered saved. It's crazy.
Great. Yeah, listen, there's lots of history that we don't have to get into, but it's pretty ugly stuff. And we're not guilty for the sins of our ancestors. So really, everybody here is beautiful and has a beautiful heart. Who else has comments, questions? Anyone? Does anybody want to read through the chat? There's 5 things up there. Is there anything that we need to discuss that I missed? Richard Price to everyone. The council encouraged. I can't even read it. Anyway, Nostra Aetate, it was called. Anyone else? All right. I want to thank you very much for your time. It's such a great honor and privilege for me to be in this conversation with you. Next week is the Piste de Resistance. And I hope that I'm not building it up too much. If you have any questions, concerns, or anything you want to discuss privately, feel free to write me. Sometimes it takes a few days to get back to you, but I do my best.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I thought that lady was going to say that she couldn't get to hug you.
Yeah, we have a thank you. Thank
That's
you,
a tough
Eduardo.
one.
So we
Thanks
have,
for being there for me.
of course, my dear.
I felt that.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right. Thank you very much. See you next week. Same bat
Thank
time,
you.
same bat channel.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.